In our last video, we left off with the standard station on the east side of the street on the corner. And let's just walk across the street now to the west side and see what there is there. Well, the first thing we see is two very nicely restored homes. Let's take a little closer look at these. Many people think that the nice homes in Port Huron, where the prominent people lived on military, was south of Griswold Street. That wasn't the case. As you've already seen in the previous video, there are some beautiful homes in this block and block north of us. And in the early 1900s, there weren't a lot of businesses. There was pretty much just homes. It was convenient for the folks that lived in these homes, especially if they were merchants on the south side of the bridge on Military Street. They could walk to work. For example, in this home here, right now it appears to be a duplex, and it was a duplex all the way back into the 1930s. But in the late 1800s, early 1900s, this home was owned by Henry Sabilla. Sabilla worked for the J.A. Davidson Company that was located in the 900 block of Military on the west side of the street. By 1928, he was the manager and president of J.A. Davidson, so quite a prominent person. The house next to it is also a very interesting house. I like the looks of it. I like the architecture of it. It had an interesting history as well. I think at one time this was probably an apartment house, but I know in the 50s and 60s it was vacant a lot. In the 1940s and 30s, this house was owned by Luella Peck. She was the widow of Cecil Peck. When Cecil Peck was alive, he was a very prominent businessman in Port Huron as well. As it says in this 1930 directory that he was president of the United States Savings Bank, chairman of the board of Peerless Egyptian Cement Company, chairman of the board Pressed Metals of America, treasurer of Canada Forwarding Company, treasurer of the Dunn Paper Company, and treasurer of the Port Huron Sulphite and Paper Company. So he was quite a businessman. In the early 1900s, this home was owned by another prominent businessman, Daniel P. Markey. In the early 1900s, Markey was the supreme commander of the Maccabees. This would have been the time period when Nathan Boynton was the supreme record keeper, as you can see to the right here. And then to the left, this building here is a predecessor of the new Maccabees building that was built there and later became the Algonquin Hotel. Like I said, I like the architecture of this house. I especially like this tower that's built toward the rear of the home. It makes a beautiful outlook tower to look over the beautiful St. Clair River and see the ships going by, and perhaps in those days the schooners. It also gave you a good view of what was coming down the road coming into Port Huron, because that was the main road coming from the south, Military Street. Just south of the two homes we've been looking at, there was another two homes as well, and they've since been torn down and replaced by this wonderful little courtyard here that is actually part of the Atrium Cafe and Ice Cream Parlor. If you've been following my videos, in most cases you'll find out that I'm always saying that the past was better than the present, but I think this one here might be an exception. This building's been beautifully restored by Rock and Gail Stevens. I think you'll see what I mean once you enter the cafe. It has gone back to 1800, early 1900 decor, and you'll see some things I think they'll interest you. You have on the walls, you'll see pictures of old Port Huron, postcards it looks like, and of course the chairs and the seating. The ceiling is quite attractive as well. I got these pictures off their website. I've never been there yet, but I've made a promise to myself the next time I'm in Port Huron, I am definitely going to stop in here and have lunch. The business I remember at this location when I was growing up was a military fruit market. There has been a couple of businesses in there since then, but in the 1940s into the 80s, military fruit market was there. And I don't have a real good picture of it, but I do have this one here that was taken during the tornado of 1953. We'll cover more about the tornado in another video. The fruit market's on the right, and you can see the FRU on the signage out front of the building. And that's Military Street Fruit Market. If you want to know what was before a military fruit market, you can actually go to the Atrium's website. It gives you a pretty good history lesson of the building. I know because I checked it. It says the building itself dates to the late 1890s. Fort Huron City Directory lists that John Parker and Company operated a grocery store at this address in 1899, 1902. In 1904, Fred Lenski operated an outlet for National Biscuit Company. 1907, Fred Ballantyne and Grant Wilson operated a drugstore. By 1931, it became Heek's Drugstore until 1939, when it evolved into the military fruit market, which remained open until 1986. When John Parker had a grocery store there at the turn of the century, he had a partner there by the name of W.D. Smith. During the same time period, Smith had another grocery store in the 300 block of Huron Avenue under the name of Smith Brothers, and it was located at the old Union Hotel. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I found this picture of the inside of the store of Smith Brothers, and I thought you might be interested in seeing it. Here's that photo, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Parker grocery store wasn't laid out very similar to this one here. I like these glass cases on the right. I wish I could see what was in them. Also note the small tile floor in the store, and it appeared that the lighting left a little bit to be desired. But you can see a couple lights up there. William Smith went on to actually operate 8 stores in Port Huron, and Smith Brothers isn't to be confused with H.A. Smith, which was the store that I remember in my generation. As you can see, they're both listed here in the directory, and so they were in direct competition with each other. When the drugstore went into the Atrium location, Parker moved his business over to the next building, which is where this empty parking lot is now. Eventually, Smith would buy them out, and it became a Smith Brother grocery store, one of the 8 that we just looked at. Smith Brothers had a grocery store through the 30s, but in 1940, Irwin Drugstore took over that location, and it later became Irwin Rexall Drugstore, as you can see from the signage here that was taken during the tornado, or after the tornado, I should say. That pretty well takes care of the 1500 block of military. Going into the 1600 block, going across Griswold Street, down military and further south, is mainly homes. And it was homes back in the old days too. Usually much nicer homes. We'll look at some of those homes in our next videos. But we can look at one location here, the one here on the right, which would be the southwest corner of Griswold Military. There's nothing there now but a yard, but at one time this location was the home of Sidney Jinks. And of course, he was the president of Jinks Shipbuilding Company. This photo is of their first shipbuilding yard, which was near the 7th Street Bridge. You can see the First Baptist Church in the background. You can also see the City Hall to the right of that in the background. And later on, they moved their location further west, down closer to the railroad bridge. This video is a little bit shorter than most of my videos, but I was afraid if I included the southeast corner that there was just too much there and it would be too long, and so I was afraid you'd fall asleep. But I'll give you a little bit of a hint at what was on this corner to whet your appetite for our next video. It had to do with these things. The streetcar, a major form of transportation at one time. So join me in our next video and see what there is to see.